Central bank policies are simple: print money, low interest rates, and a refusal to be transparent. Since 1913, the Fed has been able to successfully devalue the US dollar into a piece of garbage, and yet it is seen as stronger than most other currencies in the world. When you reach the point of no return, the walls begin to close in behind you. This is the point of no return. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. The Financial Crisis Part 2 is here. We're going to discuss some of these charts and information today. Let's begin with this, as China has devalued for a fourth day in a row. Their currency, perhaps a growing trend, but we do see it fluctuating, and we'll need to keep an eye on that specifically. Let's look at this next one. As we see the Shanghai Composite tracking very closely what happened in 2007, except this time it's doing so at an even faster rate. When it got to that peak, the decline began at a faster rate. And this is what happens when you have computer algorithms. They're using the same algorithm, and that's why they're tracking the same performance. But of course, the market will blame it on one factor or another, and I'll show you in a moment more on this, but it's all computer algorithms. That's what I'm coming out and saying. However, it doesn't even seem that the alternative media is covering this at all. Why do you think it's tracking the exact same thing? It's all computer algorithms. It's pretty easy to see that. And we're going to see more of that in a second. First, I want to get to this. We're looking at the Bank of Japan and their bank reserves in units of 100 million yen. And this is, you're looking back from the year 2000, where they engage in what we're calling here QE1 up until the new QE10 or QQE as they're knowing it now. And what we see is no different than what we have with the Federal Reserve or any other central bank. You increase the amount of money that you print more often, and that doesn't do anything to support the economy. This happens over and over again. Printing money has never been able to support the economy. You could support the stock market, absolutely. In fact, if that's all you wanted to do, then you could just print up the money, buy up the shares, and you can adjust the stock market prices to what you see fit. But that isn't going to give a boost to actual GDP. That's not how it works. Let's look at this. Actually, the link will be in the description as always if you want to check it out. The same graph, if you scroll down, then you get this information, and it goes and basically shows you exactly what was done for each of the different QEs. You're looking at basically the same things, same policies all around the world. They print up money, they buy up garbage. They print up the money out of thin air to buy the worst of the worst. They say this is going to create jobs and bring prosperity. I've said this hundreds, perhaps thousands of times, mentioned it in my book countless times. I've said it in person to hundreds and hundreds of times myself, and I've read about it, heard about it, and still I don't understand it. You cannot print up pieces of paper or zeros on a computer and create jobs. It isn't possible, and it seems like this is just going on. They're never going to be able to convince me about this, but of course the financial media is convinced. Let's look at this as we see the NYMEX open and closes here, and particularly look at those two red arrows going downward. And you see a practically, and even in the upward ones as well, you see a practically straight line. And it's almost like it's doing this at the stroke of this computer. And this is what computer algorithms do. They don't react to necessarily fundamentals Is there going to be enough oil for the next month or the next year? Or perhaps, is this company a valid company for the future or anything? No, that's not how it works. It trades on a day-to-day basis, and it uses very, very simple, in a way, very simple algorithms. Will we make more profit today? If the answer is no, then they take more and more risk. That's the way these work. It's pretty easy to see that. This is what I wrote about based on stocks from my book. There's a whole chapter, in fact, on the paper assets. If you watch the market in general, tech stocks move together, financials move together, and mining moves together. And now I want to say this in two different ways, but at an even more general view, shows that most stocks move up or down together depending on the economic conditions. So zoom in, do what they do what the so-called technical analysts and all these stock gurus and everything. They take one particular stock and they look at that. They zoom in on that. Think about Microsoft, think about Google and Apple. And they zoom in on that. Okay, today the price is $1 a share, and we believe it's going to be $1.50. So they draw a line, $1 projected price. They put an arrow up, $1.50. That's where it's going to go. And they may see even historical context. Okay, last year it was at 50 cents. So year over year it is such and such price, and this and that. They do that. But then what I like to do, the Money GPS view, the crystal ball, whatever you want to call it, you zoom out. Now we're not looking at Microsoft, we're looking at tech stocks. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at this. Well, the sector's moving up and down, and we could see all the little discrepancies back and forth. But let's take a deeper look at that. What was happening in the market to make it go up and down? Is technology any less valuable today than it was yesterday? Why did the stocks go down then? Well, let's zoom out. Let's take entire stock markets. Let's say perhaps the S&P 500. Well, on a whole, the whole S&P 500 went down that day necessarily. You look at that. Okay, we heard about some information from China not being so good. So all of a sudden, we have tech stocks, you have mining companies, you have all of these different types of stocks going down together. Well, now the picture starts to be put in place, and you're able to put these puzzle pieces all together and figure it out. And I call it the process of zooming out. The more zooming out you do, the more you begin to understand. You start connecting dots you didn't even know existed before. Now, I know I'm spending a lot of time on this, but I'm trying to give you an overview of the way that I see things, because you can look at the charts for yourself, 200-day moving averages. You could look at the stock prices and everything. You don't need me to do that. I'm here to basically open your eyes to some new information, to show you what you're not going to get elsewhere, and that includes the other alternative news. Let's look at this. As Greek banks take a hit. Now, I have a question for everyone on this channel, and perhaps rhetorical, but of course you can respond to it. Who the heck is investing in Greek banks? Is there anybody out there, any average individual, who hasn't pulled every single dime out of Greek banks? These stocks should be at zero by now. This is nothing but profit. They're attempting to make a profit from the Greek banks. I believe that every single realistic investor has already bailed on these Greek banks. This is just so unrealistic to believe that anybody would have their money in here. This is the Brazil's currency here, and we're looking at it. It just keeps hitting record lows all the time. It doesn't seem to stop. You have heavy levels of inflation happening there, as well as other countries, not just in South America, but other places in the world. The US dollar, as I said at the beginning of the video, is a piece of garbage, but compared to the other currencies, all of a sudden it looks like a piece of gold. It's very interesting to see the way that currencies work. And this is something that I've been mentioning actually for the past few videos. We're talking about automation. We're talking about robots. They're displacing our jobs. And what I want to say is a couple lines from this out of ABC. A relentless surge in wages is adding impetus to the automation revolution. China relied on seemingly endless supply of cheap labor for decades to power its economic expansion. I even talked about that in my book. But look at this. We're talking about a wage bill rising 15 to 20% a year was one big factor driving its use of robots. So if they force a wage rise, what could happen? Hang on to that for a moment. Frontline workers, their turnover rate is really high. More and people are working to do repetitive jobs. So these two issues put the manufacturing industry in China under huge pressure. If people are making too much money, they just replace them. They basically will fire a bunch of people and find out new ways to increase productivity. That means firing people. And they will also go to automation and robots. If your job can be replaced by something that will work 24 hours a day and not get paid, trust me, they're going to go with that. Automation is going to displace our jobs. Now, I wanted to mention this right here. I guess I'll just do it. I was going to make an entire video about this, and perhaps I will. I'm just going to mention this very quickly. A lot of people had a few comments to make in the previous video, perhaps the one before that. And what I was talking about is that companies are going to go this route. But then people said, why would they want all of the jobs lost? Because then nobody is going to be able to buy their products. If you think that the ultimate goal of the elite is for you to be able to buy products as a consumer, then you and I are really not on the same level here. We're not looking at the same pieces of facts here. What I see is a bunch of minions of the system, people who own, big businesses, the Walmarts and what have you. And then you have a much higher level of elite who simply wants to dominate. They don't care about money. They have the printing press. They don't care about money. That's not what they're after. They're after something much more sinister. They want to see pain. They want to see destruction. And that's what they are after. It's not about money. They have all the money in the world. They have the printing press. They have all of the real assets to back it up. They can crash the market tomorrow, throw everything they have in it the day after, and they will have even more wealth. It doesn't matter. It doesn't work like that. They are after the worst of the worst, and it's something at a more sinister level. Not the topic of this video, but just wanted to mention that for you. Now, this is something I wanted to throw in at the end here. This very interesting. Syrian civil war prompts the first withdrawal from the doomsday seed vault in the Arctic. Okay, there is a seed vault that exists in the Arctic where they put a bunch of seeds in there to protect it, because at some point in the future there could be a disaster and they'll need to take these out. If something happened to the food supply, they would have a seed to replace that. So we have all of these different varieties of seeds available for whoever needs it. In this case, they're saying that, those in this Syrian civil war are in need of it. The reason I mention this is because it's actually considered, probably still today, as a conspiracy theory that this even exists. This is NPR. You can search Doomsday Seed Vault into Google and get every mainstream media out there covering it. You see the people there at the Seed Vault right now, and it's being used for the first time. This is not a conspiracy theory. But if you would have talked about it 5 years ago, this was a conspiracy theory. How many things do we talk about here on this channel or on other channels or out there, the information that that is considered to be a conspiracy theory, a very silly term to use, and then later on it just seemed like, you don't know about that? That's crazy. Obviously everyone knows about that. It's something that we need to really break down, really need to analyze, think about all these things that they talk about today as so-called conspiracy theories, and later on we'll find out that these are mainstream media pieces of information. Don't be afraid to say what's on your heart is basically my message. If you have the facts to back it up, just go ahead and speak your mind. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. Last but not least, if you found the video informative, check out my book. It's jam-packed with information, diagrams, charts. You can flip through it at Amazon. Take care.